At her 38th birthday, in front of 23 people packed into our living room, her coworkers, cousins, Pilates instructor, even the neighbor she pretends not to like, my wife Nadine made a wish. To never let you touch me again, she said, giggling, right after blowing out the candles. Laughter exploded like fireworks. Even her father chuckled, the same man who once told me I was the first decent one she brought home. Her best friend Leah clutched her wine like a lifeline, choking on it mid-cackle. One of the younger co-workers, Sammy, I think, actually clapped. A few guests glanced at me, waiting for my comeback, expecting a sarcastic zinger or at least an awkward smile. I didn't give them that. I set the cake down slowly, like it weighed more than just sponge and sugar, and walked out the front door without a word, just silence and the echo of her joke still hanging in the air. 5 minutes. That's all it took. 5 minutes of walking to the garage, opening the safe in the wall behind the false cabinet, and pulling out the manila envelope I had prepped 9 months ago, the one labeled in neat black ink, Trigger Protocol. When I walked back in, conversation had returned, but it died again the second I crossed the threshold. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even look at her. I placed the envelope gently on the table beside the now forgotten cake. Just a joke, right? I said. You could hear the clock ticking. Literally, the one on the mantel that usually fades into the background, suddenly loud in the silence that followed. Nadine tilted her head, uncertain. Maybe she thought it was a gift, or some romantic letter, or some husband comeback meant to one-up her joke. She always thought of life as a sitcom. She was about to learn this wasn't season 3, it was the finale. She reached for the envelope, but I stopped her hand with just a look, not force, not words. Just that look. The one that says, "You should really consider your next step." I turned to the guests instead. "Anyone here who still thinks it's funny?" I asked, scanning the room. No one answered. The silence shifted into something else. Unspoken guilt, maybe, or self-preservation. Nadine tried to laugh again, softer this time. "Oh, come on, babe. It was just a little—" I cut her off. Yeah. Just a joke. Like the 2 hotel rooms in Denver? Or the little wine tasting trip last August that somehow didn't include a vineyard. And that's when her expression changed, just slightly, a tightening of the jaw, a flicker behind the eyes. I didn't need her to confess, I just needed her to understand the rules had changed. And now, quick note to everyone listening or reading this, more than 97% of people following these stories never subscribe. If you're here, if you made it this far, if you're leaning forward even a little, hit that button. It costs nothing but helps the team behind this stay sharp and dig even deeper. Back to the room. No one moved. No one breathed. I picked up the envelope again and handed it to Nadine. "Happy birthday," I said, flat as the icing on her untouched cake. She took it with both hands. Her fingers were trembling. She tried to mask it, but she wasn't as good at performance when the spotlight hit her instead of me. She opened the flap. What she found wasn't a letter. It was a dossier, over 30 pages, color-printed, indexed, and time-stamped. I hadn't gone through her phone. That would be too easy, too fragile in court, too deniable. I went through her colleagues' Slack export from the last 6 months, through metadata and photos she thought she'd deleted, through flight records tied to the company card she used under her maiden name. "Yeah, forgot about that, didn't you, Nadine?" Page after page she flipped, the color draining from her face. Her mother looked over her shoulder, eyes narrowing. Leah stopped mid-sip. Even Sammy, who had been clapping earlier, slowly put down his drink. Nadine's voice dropped to a whisper. "Where did you get all this?" I didn't answer. I just looked past her directly at Monica, her coworker's wife, the one who had helped me collect every thread, every stitch of digital betrayal. Monica didn't speak either. She just tilted her wine glass forward like a nod. The room began to break in invisible lines. Some people turned toward the door. Others studied their shoes. One guy faked a coughing fit and disappeared into the hallway. Nadine was still flipping through the file, now speeding up like she could outrun the contents. "You don't understand. This wasn't what it looks like," she stammered. "Of course not," I said. "It never is. Just like your birthday wish." She tried to hand me the envelope back. I didn't take it. "You'll want to keep that," I said. "Trust me, you're gonna need it." I watched the smug twist of her lips collapse, one detail at a time. Her eyes skimmed the first page, just a spreadsheet, right? Until she noticed the dates, columns labeled hotel, check-in, guest name, room charges, flights booked from her work account, cross-referenced with weekend conference receipts she never actually submitted. That was page 1. Page 2, screenshots from a Slack channel named Q3 Internal Offsite, except it wasn't internal or offsite. It was where Nadine and a man named Brian from procurement, married with 2 toddlers, planned their strategy alignment at a boutique spa in Sonoma. You know, candles, massages, and apparently very aligned backs. Page 3 was a PDF export of a Google Calendar event. Hers, labeled Client Dinner Confidential, except the location was tagged Marriott Garden Suite, Santa Clara. 10 o'clock p.m. start, no end time. I said nothing, didn't move, didn't blink. She glanced up briefly, like maybe I'd grin, maybe I'd laugh and say it was a trick, a test, one of those YouTube social experiments where I'd hug her afterward and say, gotcha. But all she saw was the man she married, minus the illusion. Is this? She began, flipping faster now, as if the velocity of her fingers could delete evidence. Real? I asked. You tell me. She turned to her right, toward Leah, as if hoping for a lifeline. Instead, Monica cleared her throat. Nadine froze, the air changed. See, Monica wasn't just a +1 at this party. She was the one who messaged me 4 months ago. One sentence. You deserve to know what your wife jokes about behind your back. From there, it spiraled into screenshots, voicemails, drive links, even an audio clip from a happy hour Nadine didn't know was being recorded. Monica had her reasons. Turns out betrayal breeds alliances. And Nadine had trashed her too, multiple times, multiple ways. So yeah, Monica was done keeping secrets for women who mocked her behind closed doors. You sent this? Nadine hissed, her voice trembling. Monica shrugged. He asked, I answered, simple. That's when the room fractured. Leah made a beeline to the kitchen, too fast to be casual. Her husband followed a moment later. Nadine's cousin stood up murmuring, I think the baby's crying, even though they hadn't brought one. 2 guests headed to the bathroom at once. One of them didn't come back. Nadine flipped to page 12. Her lips moved silently, reading. Her mouth opened to speak, then closed. Again, like a fish out of water, surrounded by the oxygen she no longer controlled. You planned this? She asked finally. For my birthday? No, I said, I planned it for my exit. Your birthday just happened to be thematically convenient. She pushed the file away like it was diseased. I nudged it gently back toward her. She flinched. You should keep it, I said again. That's your copy. She was shaking now, hands twitching as she clutched the table's edge. I thought of how often those hands had dismissed me, how often she'd laughed off my quiet observations, my questions, my gut. You're overthinking again, she used to say. God, you're exhausting with your spreadsheets and structure. Not everything is a math problem. No. But some things come down to accounting. One of her friends, a blonde I didn't recognize, leaned in and whispered something. Nadine swatted her away. You have no idea what this will do, she hissed to me, voice lowered now, as if damage control was still on the table. To my reputation, to our finances. Oh, I do, I said. Page 24 should cover that. And it did. On page 24 was a printout of an email she'd sent Brian. Not from her work account, from her personal Gmail, the one she didn't think I knew about. The subject line, let's be real. He's too safe, too careful. I need danger. I need risk. I need you. She hadn't just broken vows. She'd narrated it. Her mother, who'd been silent this whole time, let out a choked sound, half gasp, half sob. Nadine's eyes darted across the room, searching for allies, finding none. This isn't you, she said, reaching out toward me. I pulled my chair back. Not dramatically, just enough. No, I said, this is me, when I stopped pretending. She blinked fast, lips parting like she might scream, or cry, or spin some threadbare explanation. But all she did was sit there, in front of her uneaten cake, the candle still casting flickering shadows on the documents spread before her like an autopsy report. Why now? She whispered. I stood, buttoned my jacket, checked my watch, not performatively, just to check. I told you once, I said, you were free to leave whenever you wanted. And I stayed. No, I said, turning toward the door, you just didn't think I'd ever walk first. They started leaving the way people do when a storm's coming, casually, politely, but with urgency just beneath the surface. The ones closest to the drama made eye contact less and less. Some whispered to their partners, others checked phones they hadn't touched in an hour. A couple I barely knew, her coworkers, I think, offered a quick thanks for the lovely evening before slipping out the front door like they were evacuating a crime scene. Leah pretended to look for her keys for a full 2 minutes, then grabbed a half-finished bottle of rosé like it was a valid excuse to leave. "Don't want this going to waste," she said with a brittle laugh. No one laughed back. Her father said nothing. He sat by the fireplace with a look I hadn't seen before. Not angry, not embarrassed, just resigned. He was a man who'd watched a slow-motion collapse and decided he was too old to pull anyone from under the rubble. And then there was her sister. She walked straight toward me with the kind of brisk, take-charge energy that made it clear she thought she could fix this, the same way she once tried to fix our bathroom grout. Spoiler, the tiles still fall off in the guest shower. "Daniel," she said quietly, guiding me toward the hallway. "Look, maybe we can all just cool down." I handed her the file. "Page 14, I said. She blinked, surprised. "What?" "Page 14. She opened it. At first, confusion, then comprehension, then shame. Her mouth twitched once like she wanted to argue, but her face turned ghost pale as she read the transcript. Her own voice, pulled from a group chat backup, Nadine thought she deleted months ago. The line was clear. "Don't risk it. He's not the type to forgive. If he finds out, you'll lose more than just a weekend." She didn't say another word, just folded the page back into the file and stepped aside. Her heels echoed down the hallway as she left, clutching her coat like armor. Back in the room, Nadine was trying to salvage scraps. Her hands gestured too much, voice an octave higher than usual. "You guys don't understand. It wasn't serious. It was just flirting, stupid, dumb, meaningless stuff. I never planned." "That's the point," I said, interrupting her with calm precision. "You didn't plan. I did." She turned to me, face blotchy now, red around the eyes, the kind of puffiness that shows when the adrenaline spikes but tears refuse to fall. "Daniel, please, it wasn't emotional. It was just a phase. Everyone has them." "Sure," I said, tilting my head. "Just like every marriage has a clause where one partner creates a spreadsheet to document betrayal in chronological order, cross-referenced with flight miles and weekend getaways. Totally normal." "That's not fair," she snapped, the old bite returning for a second. "You're making this a trial. It was one mistake." "One?" I said, eyebrows raised. "Check the section labeled repeat offenses. Starts around page 28. She hesitated, didn't reach for the file, just looked at it like it was toxic. Because it was. It was made of receipts, and the one thing Nadine had never handled well was proof. Her voice lowered again, softer this time. "Okay. Maybe it happened more than once, but none of it mattered. You're the one I come home to. Doesn't that mean anything?" "No," I said, "because coming home isn't love. It's logistics." She didn't like that. Her shoulders curled inward, defensive, but the fire in her eyes, whatever was left of it, was dimming. "I made a mistake," she tried again. "I got bored. I felt unseen. You were always working or organizing or managing something, and you were always rehearsing exits," I said flatly. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I could feel the last threads of the party unraveling. The smell of frosting was still in the air. A candle had fallen over, half melted into the icing, like it was trying to vanish. Cups were half full, plates untouched. A birthday banner drooped above her like a bad joke. She looked around the room, finally noticing what I had seen from the beginning. There were no allies left. No friends rushing to defend her, no sympathetic hand on her back. Even her own mother had slipped out through the kitchen when things turned. That's the thing about people. They don't like standing next to heat when they realize they're flammable too. She looked at me one last time. "This isn't you," she whispered. "You're kind. You forgive." I stepped closer. Not enough to intimidate, just enough to be heard. "You mistook silence for weakness. That's on you." She nodded slowly, like her body understood, before her pride did. "What now?" she asked. "Now?" I gestured toward the cake. "You blow out the candles. You got your wish." By morning, the laughter was gone. The hangover wasn't. Nadine woke up alone in our marital bed, in a house that still smelled like candle wax and wilted roses. Her makeup was streaked across the pillow. Her phone buzzed beside her. Messages, some pitying, some checking in, a few unreadable walls of text from Leah. Monica hadn't written. Monica didn't need to. Her silence was a signature. Nadine sat up and rubbed her temples. The first instinct wasn't to apologize. It wasn't to reflect. It was to secure her position. That's always how she operated. She reached for her iPad and opened the banking app, expecting to see the familiar splash screen, the familiar numbers, the shared account balance she used to refer to as our cushion. It showed. She blinked, refreshed, tried again. The number didn't change. She clicked into account activity, only to be greeted by a pop-up banner. This account is no longer available under your login credentials. For questions, please contact your financial advisor or refer to Clause 7B of your signed agreement. Clause 7B. She didn't even remember a Clause 7B. She tapped the Notifications tab. New message, timestamp 6:03 a.m. Notice of spousal access revocation due to triggering event. Infidelity. Claims frozen pending formal separation. Per Clause 7B, shared assets have been migrated to fiduciary management until reassessment. The screen pulsed with one last line. Further inquiries should be directed to the legal team of Whitlow, Knox, and Garvey. She called me first. Straight to voicemail. Then again. Nothing. Next, her lawyer, Janine, who sounded halfway through her first mimosa. What the hell is Clause 7B? Nadine snapped the second the line picked up. A pause. Clause what? You're my lawyer and you don't know? Another pause. This one longer. I didn't draft anything with a 7B, Janine said cautiously. Not on your prenup, not in any addendum. Are you sure it's not something Daniel added separately? Nadine froze because now the sick feeling started to crawl in. The one that told her this wasn't improvisation, this wasn't a reactive tantrum, it was a mechanism. Activated. Preset. You're saying he rewrote our agreement? Janine's tone hardened. I'm saying he may have submitted a legal amendment through fiduciary restructuring, depending on how your estate was organized, and if it included discretionary trusts or mutual consent clauses, he might have been able to file an internal revision without breaching contract. I didn't sign anything, Nadine said. Doesn't matter if you did, Janine replied. If you signed the trust's original framework and it had discretionary proxy triggers, he wouldn't need your permission. He'd just need cause. Infidelity. He had cause. And she had given it to him. On paper, in Slack, on receipts, in photos, in her own words. Words she once joked about never writing down because Daniel reads everything. He did. He didn't just read, he indexed. She opened her email, searched for the term Clause 7B, nothing. She tried trust next, found a short thread from 6 months ago, an email forwarded from his family's financial planner. Subject line, Draft Addendum Review, Contingency Shield. She had never opened it, assumed it was estate stuff, boring, technical, the kind of thing Daniel always took care of, bless his obsessive little heart. And now the house was still technically ours, but the title was held in a shell company she'd never heard of. The utilities were on autopay, but she wasn't the primary on any of them. Even the car she drove, her beloved white Audi, was listed under a corporate lease. His signature, not hers. One corporate decision, and that key fob becomes a paperweight. The panic set in with no crescendo. It didn't rise like a storm. It sank in like water under the floorboards. Slow, invisible, inevitable. She opened her notes app, typed a new message. We need to talk. Please, I didn't know what I was risking. Can we at least talk? She hovered over the send button. Didn't tap it. Not yet. Instead, she opened the gallery, scrolled through old photos, anniversaries, beach trips, birthday cakes that hadn't melted under tension, and then she stopped. A picture of them from last winter, smiling, arms around each other. In the background, blurry but visible, a stack of legal binders behind Daniel's chair, one tab poking out from the top, faint text barely readable. Revocable trusts, contingency edits. The photo had been taken 6 months ago. He'd been planning it that long. Her message remained unsent. The cursor blinked at her like it was asking, what now? What next? She didn't know. For the first time in years, Nadine didn't have a plan, only the creeping realization that she had been sleeping beside one. She banged on Monica's door like a debt collector with nothing to lose. Sunday morning, 8:12 a.m. Birds still chirping, trash bins untouched on the curb, joggers passing with headphones in, and there Nadine stood, still in her nightshirt and coat, mascara smudged, breath fogging in the cold, fists pounding like Monica had stolen her child. The door creaked open a few inches. Monica didn't look surprised. "You knew, didn't you?" Nadine hissed. Monica didn't flinch, just leaned against the frame with a mug in hand, the scent of black coffee drifting between them. "Yeah," she said, calm, final. "I knew." Nadine pushed inside without being invited, jaw clenched so tight her molars could have cracked granite. "Since when?" "He showed me the file 2 months ago." "And you didn't think to tell me?" Monica set her coffee down, walked over to the counter, and turned slowly. "I did tell you. You just didn't listen. You laughed, called him boring Sherlock, said if he ever caught on, you'd spin it, remember?" Nadine opened her mouth, then shut it. Monica stepped closer, voice low now, almost gentle in its certainty. "He didn't spin. You did. And you underestimated the one thing he never joked about. You." There it was again, that feeling Nadine couldn't shake, that the people she thought she controlled had long stopped orbiting her, that somewhere between jokes and justifications, she'd become the outsider in her own narrative. "I just need to talk to him," she muttered, pulling out her phone. "He'll listen." The call rang once, then voicemail. Again, voicemail. She opened his calendar app. Yes, she still had the shared view. Empty, no events. Just a single recurring tag that said unavailable sabbatical. Her heart rate spiked. She grabbed her coat, shoved the phone in her pocket. "I'll go to the office, she snapped. "He can't just disappear." Monica didn't stop her, just leaned back against the counter and said, "Let me know how that goes." At the firm's downtown tower, the security guard recognized her but wouldn't buzz her past the second gate. "Mr. Daniels is not in," he said, eyes not even looking up from the logbook. "Tell him it's his wife," Nadine snapped. The man didn't blink. "He's on sabbatical." "Since when?" He glanced at the screen. "Effective yesterday." She stormed past reception, past the elevator bank, straight to the executive suite on 22, where Daniel's nameplate still hung outside the corner office. The receptionist looked up, startled. "I need to speak to Daniel." "Mrs. Daniels," the woman trailed off. "He's not in." "I see that. I need to know who approved his leave." There was a pause, one of those careful silences where the person is calculating whether or not to lie. "The board did," the receptionist finally said. "Unanimous vote." Nadine blinked. "He still is the board." "He's chair," the woman corrected gently. "He called for a sabbatical, abstained from the vote himself, and left all directives in motion. Everything's been delegated." "To who?" "Doesn't say. He redacted that section." Of course he did, because Daniel didn't just vanish. He structured his absence. He turned it into architecture. Nadine stood there in the glass hallway, surrounded by the sterile hum of professionalism, a place where she used to be welcome with wine at fundraisers, where partners used to fawn over her with fake smiles and call her a real asset. Now no one even stood to greet her. No eyes met hers. Just silence and distance. She walked out slowly. Each step down the hallway felt longer than the last. Back at the elevator, she turned and stared at the frosted glass panel bearing his name. She touched it once. Cold. Just like the man she'd assumed would break, beg, or at least buckle under betrayal. But no. He had vanished from her reach, not out of cowardice, but out of precision. A surgical retreat executed with the kind of grace you never expect from the quiet ones. Her phone buzzed. A message. From Leah. "Hey, just checking in. You okay?" She almost laughed. Okay? She wasn't even invited to her own fallout because they all knew. Monica, Leah, her sister, maybe even the damn receptionist. Everyone had been briefed, looped in, or at the very least, prepared. Everyone except her. She sat in the car for a long time, not crying, not screaming, just realizing she'd become the one person Daniel no longer had to explain anything to, because now she wasn't in the loop. She was the reason it had to be closed. Her lawyer's office smelled like old coffee and expensive panic. Janine had cleared her schedule, an unusual gesture since Janine usually ran a 4-client rotation and barely glanced at a screen without charging for it. But today, her attention was fixed. Her fingers danced over the keyboard while Nadine sat in the leather chair, staring at the wall like it might cough up answers if she glared hard enough. "I need you to explain how he moved everything," Nadine said, for the third time, "and why nothing triggered notifications. We had alerts set." "No," Janine said, still typing. "You had alerts set on joint assets, the ones he never used." Nadine blinked. "What do you mean, never used?" Janine finally turned the screen. "Because he didn't drain shared accounts. He created new ones, parallel structures. Think of it like a second skeleton underneath the skin of your marriage." Nadine's throat tightened. She leaned forward. Displayed on the monitor, a file directory titled Redline Foundation LLC, dozens of subfolders. One caught her eye, Holdings. Inside, documents bearing Daniel's signature, dated monthly, spaced perfectly apart over 11 months. Trust transfers, asset migrations, IP assignments. Her voice cracked. "What is this?" Janine scrolled to one PDF and opened it. "This," she said, "is the trust now holding the title to your home." "No, that's our house," Nadine snapped. "It's joint. I signed on the—" Janine raised a hand. "You signed on the lease renewal, not the deed. The deed was quietly reassigned last winter, filed through a corporate shell called Delman Properties. That shell is now owned by the Redline Foundation, which you're not part of. He did this in 4 moves, clean, legal, uncontested." Nadine felt the blood leave her face. "And the cars?" she asked. "Same structure, his name on the lease, yours on the insurance. You thought that made you a co-owner." "It made you liable." Her hands curled into fists. "What about the patent? He'd been working on that logistics algorithm for 3 years. That's our intellectual property." Janine clicked again. The screen flashed open a document with a notarized timestamp. "Assigned to his consulting entity 2 months ago. Ownership transferred. You were listed in the original filing as a supportive spouse for funding declaration. Legally, that gives you no claim." Nadine's voice dropped. "So I get nothing." Janine didn't answer. "Say it." The lawyer's tone flattened, clinical. "You get nothing." Nadine stood and began pacing the room, hands in her hair. "He can't just vanish and lock me out of my own life." "He didn't vanish," Janine said. "He executed." Those words hit harder than anything in the file. Because that's what it felt like. Not abandonment, not revenge, erasure. Janine leaned back in her chair. "He's not just leaving, Nadine. He's stripping the narrative, removing you from the timeline. There won't even be footprints when he's done." A silence stretched between them. Then Nadine asked almost too quietly, "Was there a trigger, a single moment where he started this?" Janine opened one final file, a document titled Amendment Trigger Protocol PDF. First line, "Event of trust breach determined by independent third-party proof of infidelity, emotional manipulation, or public humiliation." Nadine exhaled slowly. The candles, the joke, the laugh track she thought she controlled, that wasn't the spark. It was the final match to a fire already built. She whispered, "He never planned to fix it." Janine closed the laptop. "No, he planned to finish it." That was the dread. Not that she'd been left, not even that she'd lost the house, the accounts, the car, the company equity. It was the realization that maybe, just maybe, none of it had ever been real, not to him, not in the way she needed it to be. Because if a man can untangle a marriage this cleanly, this clinically, this quietly, what did that say about what she meant to him? And worse, had she ever really had him to lose? Started with a headline. She was at the salon, waiting for a color touch-up she could no longer justify affording, flipping through her phone out of habit, not interest. The notification came from one of those local business newsletters she never unsubscribed from, probably because Daniel used to forward her articles from it with subject lines like "worth reading" or "someday you'll be in here." Except this time, he was. Chairman Daniels, the man who plans 10 moves ahead. She almost dropped her phone. There he was, full color spread, on a terrace she didn't recognize. Somewhere modern, with skyline views and soft lighting. Daniel, in a dark tailored jacket, holding a glass of red wine with that soft half smile he used to give when he knew something others didn't, which, as it turned out, was always. She tapped the article. Her heart didn't race. It sunk, cold, steady, like a diver realizing too late there's no rope back up. The opening paragraph praised his surgical acumen, his long-term thinking, and unshakable emotional detachment, phrases that once would have struck her as boring consultant speak, but now read like obituaries for the version of Daniel she thought she knew. The writer described his strategic sabbatical, calling it a power move of humility, a decision that showed Daniel wasn't running from anything. He was simply stepping aside because he could. Page 2 opened with a quote, "Some people think revenge is loud, but real power is silent repositioning." That one spread, shared, reposted, screenshot, it landed in group chats, went semi-viral on business Twitter. Nadine saw it again later that night on someone's Instagram story tagged as "a real one knows." Not once in the entire profile was she mentioned, not as a spouse, not as a partner, not as a co-founder or background figure. There were no sources close to the family, no side comments, no anonymous allusions to a messy unraveling. To Daniel, she no longer existed in the narrative. She was reading his legacy as if it belonged to a stranger. He talked about misaligned partnerships, about learning from silent mistakes, about evolving away from dependencies. Each quote hit with the sharpness of a blade that didn't pierce skin. It just removed limbs you didn't know were gone until you tried to use them. The journalist wrote glowingly about how Daniel restructured his firm's internal policies to reduce emotional liabilities. Yes, that was the term, emotional liabilities, as if human connection was something to be logged, tagged, then offloaded. A small photo in the side column showed him shaking hands with a new partner. Young, sharp, not flashy, no drama, not her. There was a brief mention of a charity fund he'd launched, Redline Foundation, named after his father's old manufacturing company, the same shell that now owned her former home. Her lawyer had been right. He wasn't leaving. He was redrawing the map, and she wasn't on it. She scrolled back to the photo, zoomed in, watched his expression, not smug, not even vengeful, just done. This was what haunted her more than any screaming match, any door slam, any table flipped in anger. Daniel hadn't punished her. He hadn't fought for her either. He had edited her out. And that, being unmentioned, unseen, unreferenced, was somehow worse than all the accusations she could have faced, because people recover from betrayal. They rebuild from conflict. But how do you claw your way back into a story that no longer acknowledges you were ever in it? At the salon, the stylist tapped her shoulder. "Ready?" Nadine blinked. The mirror in front of her caught her reflection. Root growth visible, eyes dull, posture slouched. A woman reading about the man she once thought she controlled, now shining without her shadow anywhere nearby. She nodded. "Yeah," she whispered. "Let's cover it up." The restaurant was dim, overly intimate for what Nadine needed. She didn't want mood lighting or gentle piano covers of songs she used to sing off-key in the car with Daniel. She needed clarity, blunt light, cold steel. Instead, she got tea lights and a waiter who kept smiling like someone had dared him to flirt with every woman over 35. Across from her sat Chloe, her sister technically, though the title had become more ceremonial than real over the years. They hadn't shared a holiday in 3. Their last conversation before this had been a passive-aggressive birthday message sent 2 hours late. Hope it was everything you deserved. Now here they were, sipping overpriced water like strangers. "I just need him to talk to me," Nadine said, breaking the silence. "One more time, that's all. I'll say what I have to say, and he can slam the door. But I need him to see me." Chloe exhaled slowly, stirring her untouched cocktail. "He won't." "Why?" Nadine's voice cracked. "Because he's punishing me?" Chloe shook her head. "No, because he doesn't hate you. And that's worse." Nadine blinked. "If he hated you," Chloe continued, "there'd still be heat, energy, something to work with. But there's nothing now. It's like trying to light a fire with water." Nadine stared down at the tablecloth, tracing a stain with her thumbnail. "I wasn't trying to blow it all up," she murmured. I didn't think it would cost everything." Chloe reached into her purse and pulled out a folded printout. Smooth paper, clean edges. It had been preserved deliberately. Nadine took it with trembling hands, unfolded it, and read the top line. Trigger protocol. Execution schedule. She didn't understand at first. Thought it was a joke. A prank file someone made to sound dramatic. Then she saw the subheadings. Month 1, separate shell corporation established. Month 2, legal addendum filed via silent clause. Month 3, asset reallocation begins. Initiated post-confirmation of infidelity. Month 4, trust transfer completion. Month 5, sabbatical notification. Board pre-briefed. Month 6, event catalyst. Timed. Birthday. She felt the blood drain from her fingertips. Each step was time-stamped, signed, notarized, coordinated with someone named M.W., a legal consultant based in Chicago. The document even included a column for emotional fallout projections. Under her name it read, likely to spiral into denial, bargaining, performative apology, eventual dissociation, recommend zero engagement post-catalyst to avoid narrative reentry attempts. Chloe watched her read, no satisfaction in her face, just quiet pity. You're telling me he gave this to you? Chloe nodded. 6 months ago, after you humiliated him at that dinner, remember? When you called him our decorative accountant in front of everyone? Nadine remembered. She also remembered the look on his face that night. Not angry, not embarrassed, just cataloging. He gave me this, Chloe said, tapping the paper, and said, you'll need it someday. She's going to come looking for someone to blame, and I want you to understand, I didn't break her. She did. Nadine couldn't breathe. Her throat closed around nothing. Her chest felt hollow, not heavy, absent, like her lungs were just decorations now. I thought he'd be mad, she whispered. I thought he'd yell or leave a note or cheat back. Something. He doesn't react like you do, Chloe said. He designs. Nadine's fingers tightened around the paper until it crinkled. I'm not a case study, she said, eyes wild. I'm not a variable in his little algorithm. Chloe didn't argue, just looked down, then back up. You were the one who turned him into a case study. That was the worst part, the part she hadn't said out loud. She had treated him like he was disposable. The safe option, the man who'd be there when the party was over, the one who didn't need feeding or drama or attention, just a laugh every now and then and a warm body in bed. And when she got bored, she started poking, testing, prodding him like a wall, assuming it would never collapse. But it hadn't collapsed. It had moved, strategically, quietly. And now she stood alone in the open, no walls, no doors, holding a map of an escape plan that had never been meant for her eyes. Is there anything left? She asked, voice barely audible. Chloe didn't answer, didn't need to, because the document had already answered for her. The street looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. Nadine pulled up to the curb, like muscle memory had dragged her there.
Same driveway slope, same wind chime by the porch that Daniel hated but never took down, same ivy on the trellis, though someone had trimmed it now into a cleaner shape, neat, controlled, like everything else he'd touched since. She stepped out, heels clicking against the pavement that used to be hers. She wasn't even sure what brought her here. Maybe it was the dream she had the night before. Daniel standing in the doorway, arms crossed, saying, "You don't live here anymore." Or maybe it was the fact that every other door in her life had closed so efficiently, so coldly, that this one felt like the last place left to knock. The garden had changed. The wild hydrangeas she used to plant and forget were gone, replaced by something symmetrical, drought-resistant, professionally arranged, no signs of the chaos she once called charm. She walked to the porch and reached for the keypad. Code denied. She tried again. Denied. A new voice prompt spoke. Welcome guest. This lock does not recognize your entry credentials. Not even a rejection, just neutral exclusion, as if her identity had been wiped from the system along with her marriage. She raised her hand and knocked. Footsteps inside. A pause.
Then the door opened, and a man stood in front of her. Early 40s, polite, neutral expression. A child's voice echoed from somewhere inside, "Dad, where's the orange scissors?" He turned his head and called back, "Check the junk drawer," then looked at her. "Can I help you?" "I'm sorry. I used to live here," she said, forcing a polite smile. "Is Daniel Daniels still the owner?" He shook his head. "No, he sold it to the foundation last quarter. Red Line Foundation, I think. My partner and I lease it now through them." Nadine's lips parted. "He sold it." Yep, the whole neighborhood's been shifting into trust ownership, long-term rental strategy, good investment. Of course it was. Daniel didn't just leave her behind. He turned their house into an asset class. She nodded mechanically. "Did he leave anything? For me, I mean?" The man looked over his shoulder, then walked to the front hall table and picked up a small cardboard box. He handed it to her without asking a name. Maybe Daniel had prepared for this too. Inside, cushioned by soft tissue paper, was a single half-melted candle, red, the kind she'd stuck in his slice of birthday cake just before she made her joke. Taped to the candle was a square of notepaper. Daniel's handwriting. "Make a better wish next time." No signature, no timestamp, no final speech. Just that. Nadine stared at it until the lines blurred. Her fingers trembled, but she didn't cry. She couldn't. This wasn't grief. Grief meant something had died. This was something else. It was the bone-deep realization that she hadn't just lost her husband, she'd lost relevance. She was the intruder now. A woman holding a melted relic from a party that ended without her even realizing it. Behind the man, lights glowed warm inside the living room. A child laughed again. Someone started playing music, something light with piano. She used to hate silence in the house. Daniel used to fill it with jazz when she left for errands, as if the walls needed noise to remind them they were still a home. Now the walls had new sounds, new people, new names, and no memory of her. She turned and walked down the porch steps slowly, candle in hand, the note still stuck to it like a tag on a returned gift. As she reached the sidewalk, the man called after her. "Hey, miss." She turned. "Do you want to leave a forwarding address?" She didn't answer. There was nowhere left to forward to. The cafe wasn't glamorous. No marble countertops or artful latte foam. Just a place tucked into the corner of a quiet street with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu that hadn't changed in years. That's why Daniel liked it. Predictable. Still, no performative friendliness, no loud espresso machines hissing for attention, just peace. He sat by the window, pen in hand, notebook open. Not a laptop, not a phone. Just paper, ink, and the silence he'd earned. He wasn't writing anything dramatic. No revenge memoir, no tell-all, just thoughts. Ideas, the kind he used to scribble in his head during board meetings while Nadine tapped away on her phone beside him, texting someone she swore was her old coworker who needed career advice. Now, the pages were filled only with clarity. A waitress walked over, maybe 20, maybe 30. He didn't guess anymore. She placed a small plate beside him. A single slice of almond cake with a candle stuck in it. "On the house," she said with a smile. "Birthday boy?" Daniel looked up, then down at the plate. He shook his head softly. "No, just free." She smiled, nodded, and left without further questions. He didn't touch the cake, just let the candle burn slowly, unattended. Across town, Nadine walked down 6th Street, eyes scanning for something she couldn't name. The air smelled like old rain and exhaust. She hadn't planned to come here. Her feet had just moved. She stopped in front of a venue they once toured together, back when they were still pretending they'd renew vows someday, on an anniversary that meant something. The lights were dim now, posters being pulled down, workers folding chairs, wiping tables, erasing the evidence of an event just concluded. She stepped closer. The poster read, Strategic Silence, a lecture by Daniel R. Daniels. Below, a masterclass in detachment, clarity, and repositioning. No photo, just his name, the date, and a quote underneath. Control isn't loud. It's knowing when to exit without slamming the door. She stared for a long time. Inside, someone rolled a dolly across the hardwood floor, chairs scraping, a sound that used to annoy her. Now, it just felt final. She hadn't been invited, no one had, because it wasn't a performance. It was an exit. She turned to the window. Her own reflection stared back. She looked older, not tired, just undefined, like a woman whose role had been edited from the script after too many improvised lines. Across the city, Daniel finished writing. He looked at the candle, watched it flicker to nothing. He didn't make a wish. He had already made his, the one no one ever expects from the man they assumed would always stay. The wish to disappear, not out of vengeance, but out of precision. She thought he'd scream, thought he'd beg, thought he'd crumble. He didn't. He handed her the match, watched her light the fuse, and never stepped back inside the room she burned.